Okay, so I want to talk about something that weirdly enough has just kind of been sitting in the background of FNAF lore for years now. It's one of those details that everyone noticed, everyone talked about, everyone had a theory about, and then we just kind of moved on. A recent thread on Reddit, FNAF Theories, brought it back up with a very simple question. Do we still have any idea why this is? And the this in question is the recurring number pattern 1, 5, 7, 8, or some variation of those digits appearing together. Not once, not twice, but across multiple FNAF pieces of media. So today we're going to slow down and ask, where does this number sequence actually appear? What do we know about it canonically? What are the strongest interpretations? And more importantly, is there any evidence that this is ever meant to be solved? Because this might be one of those mysteries that feels important, but may not actually be confirmed to mean anything at all. Okay, let's start simple. The numbers 1, 5, 7, and 8 have appeared in ways that seem deliberate. The most commonly cited example comes from Five Nights at Freddy's sister location, where audio distortion and reverse dialogue led some fans to isolate those digits from the noise. Later players claim similar digit patterns appeared in Five Nights at Freddy's AR special delivery through corrupted data strings and hidden asset IDs. Now, before we go any further, here's something very important. There is no explicit in-game line that says, these numbers are important. There is no file labeled 1578 explained. There is no canon statement from Scott Cawthorn confirming that this sequence represents anything. What we have is pattern recognition, and FNAF fans are extremely good at pattern recognition, sometimes to our benefit, sometimes not. The leading interpretation, and the one heavily discussed in the Reddit thread, is that 1578 represents a date, specifically January 7th, 1985. Now why 1985? Because 1985 is widely accepted, based on Fazbear Fright's parallels and timeline reconstruction, as the year of the missing children incident. But here's the critical nuance. In the games themselves, the missing children incident is not explicitly dated to 1985. That year is strongly implied through cross-continuity material and timeline synthesis. So already we're dealing with layered interpretation. Now here's where it gets more specific. Some theorists argue that January 7th, 1985 could represent the opening of Circus Baby's Pizza World, the day Elizabeth Afton died, or a pre-MCI event tied to the Afton family timeline. But let's stop there. Do we have any in-game evidence that Elizabeth died on January 7th? No. Do we have confirmation that Circus Baby's Pizza World opened in January? No. So what are we actually working with? A date that fits neatly into a theorized year. That's it. The Reddit thread leans toward the Elizabeth interpretation. The reasoning goes like this. The number appears prominently in sister location. Sister location centers on Elizabeth Afton. Therefore, the numbers likely relate to Elizabeth's death. Now that sounds reasonable at first glance, but we have to ask, is there any direct in-game dialogue tying those numbers to Elizabeth? Circus Baby never states a date. The opening date is never shown. There is no calendar on the wall. The only timeline clue we get is that the facility shut down shortly after opening due to a gas leak cover story. That's it. So the Elizabeth date theory is logical, but it's still an inference. Some commenters in the thread suggest something different. What if the numbers aren't a date at all? Other proposed explanations include an internal asset tag that leaked into audio unintentionally, a reused developer string, a red herring, a scrambled code not meant to form a calendar date, a symbolic reference rather than a literal one. Now here's the interesting part. FNAF has a history of including hidden numbers that don't mean anything. For example, the byte of 87 is directly referenced. 1983 is shown explicitly in FNAF 4. 2023 is shown in FNAF 3's newspaper. When Scott wants us to know a date, He tends to show the full year. He does not usually hide it inside reversed audio distortion without ever confirming it later. That's not impossible though, but it's inconsistent with his usual design pattern. This is where we need to be careful. One of the core arguments in the Reddit thread is that the pattern reappears across media, but when you isolate each instance individually, they don't always appear in the exact same order. Sometimes it's 1578, sometimes digits are rearranged, sometimes it's interpreted from static noise. That weakens the intentional repeated code theory slightly. If Scott wanted a recurring signature date, we would expect consistency. The fact that the digits are extracted from distortion makes it harder to prove intent. Let's test the strongest version of the theory. If 1578 is January 7th, 1985, does that align with the missing children incident? The MCI is often placed in 1985 because Fazbear Fright's parallels suggest that year. It fits between the 1983 and the 1987 reopening. It explains timeline spacing. But again, the games never state 1985 explicitly. So tying 1578 to MCI creates a chain. Hidden digits, date, 1985, MCI, Elizabeth timeline. That's multiple inference steps stacked together. That doesn't make it wrong. It just means the confidence level drops at each link. Here's the uncomfortable possibility. What if 1578 is not a lore clue? What if it's a remnant of audio compression artifacts, a reused code fragment, or something that fans elevated beyond its intended importance? FNAF history includes examples of fans solving real mysteries, but it also includes examples of fans over-solving coincidences. Scott has stated in the past that not every detail is a cryptogram. Sometimes things are just atmospheric. If the numbers were meant to unlock something major, why has no later game clarified them? We've had Pizzeria Simulator, Ultimate Custom Night, Help Wanted, Security Breach, Ruin, and no explicit callback to 1578. That silence is notable. So why does this mystery refuse to die? Because it feels deliberate. The digits are clean, they're specific. They're not random like 3924, and FNAF fans are trained to treat numbers seriously. Every major turning point in this franchise revolves around years. 1983, 1984, 1985, 1986. So when a clean set of digits appears, it's almost instinctual to interpret it as a date, even without a confirmation. Here's the most defensible position we can take right now. The digits 1578 have appeared in ways fans interpret as deliberate. There is no in-game confirmation of what they mean. The date interpretation, January 7th, 1985, is plausible but unconfirmed. There is no direct evidence tying that date to Elizabeth's death. No later title has reinforced this code. So the honest answer to the Reddit thread's question, do we still have any idea why this is we have theories. We don't have confirmation. And until a future game explicitly references that number sequence in a meaningful way, it remains in the category of unresolved speculation. FNAF lore thrives in ambiguity. Sometimes mysteries are breadcrumbs. Sometimes they're background noise. The 1578 pattern sits right in the grey zone between the two. It could be the missing puzzle piece to a timeline gap. Or it could be something we collectively decided mattered more than it did. And that uncertainty is very on brand for this franchise.